Okay. You just utilize this today.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to go ahead and jump right into it as we're running a little late. Dr. Saab, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready right now. I just want the perspective that if you look from the last month, now the emphasis is basically on Islam and Muslims as a millat rather than one nation. यानी एक कौम नहीं बल्कि एक मिल्लत की सूरत में पेश किया जा रहा है यहाँ. तो पाक है गर्दे बदर से सारे दामा तेरा दैट द लास्ट टाइम दैट तुम एक मुल्क की बात नहीं, वतन की बात नहीं, बल्कि तुम एक बरादरी हो, मुस्लिम बरादरी, इस्लामिक बरादरी. तो अब ये बंद है, तू न मिट जाएगा ईरान के मिट जाने से, नशाए मै को ताल्लुक नहीं पैमाने से, है आया शोरश तातार के अफसाने से, पासबा मिल गए काबे को सनम खाने से, कश्ती हक का जमाने में सहारा तू है, असरे नौ रात है, धुंधला सा सितारा तू है. तू ना मिट जाएगा ईरान के मिट जाने से आसान है, नशाए मै को ताल्लुक नहीं पैमाने से. नशाए मै मीन्स शराब का जो नशा है, तो शराब का नशा मीन्स यहाँ पे मैसेज, जो मैसेज है, जो तुम हो, जो तुम्हारी हस्ती है, पैमाने से, जिस चीज के अंदर भरे हुए हो, पैमाना कहते हैं जिस गिलास के अंदर शराब हो. तो इस गिलास के अंदर शराब है, ईरान के अंदर है, पाकिस्तान के अंदर है, इंडिया के अंदर है, इससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता. नशाए मै को ताल्लुक नहीं पैमाने से, जो इस्लाम का मैसेज है, इसको एक मुल्क से कोई वास्ता नहीं है. आया मीन्स अपैरेंट. Yorish is the struggle or battle, or actually jung. Tatar is the Tartars. Afsane is their story. है यहाँ Yorish Tatar के अफसाने से, the story of Tartars invasion or their fight. It's apparent from that. क्या apparent है? पासबां मिल गए काबे को सनम खाने से. Pasba is a caretaker in a way, or somebody that protects it. Kaaba is Islamic message. Sanam Khana is the word of idols, which means non-believers. So he says from Tartar, from the invasion of the Tartars, and from that story, this is clear that Sanam Khan, Kabe ko यानी इस्लाम को, इसके प्रोटेक्टर जो हैं वो सनम खाने से मिल जाएंगे. Wherever तुम लोग जाओगे वहां पर there will be people that will basically come out to help. कश्ती हक का जमाने में सहारा तू है. कश्ती हक is the boat of the truth, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's group. जमाने में सहारा तू है, that's easy. असरे now, the new time. असर time को कहते हैं, now is the new one. धुंधला is not so bright, fading away kind of a thing. Sitara tu hai. You are a fading away star. So these are the words that are in here. Now, Nihal, you have to just put it together to see what message seems to come across. Urdu mein na?
Yeah.
इससे डॉक्टर साहब ये जो किश्ती हक का जमाने में सहारा तू है, असरे नो रात है, धुंधला सा सितारा तू है
जी.
मतलब तो एक्चुअली मुझे जो बात समझ आ रही है ये कि इस असरे नौ की रात में तुम धुंधले से सितारे हो. सो नॉट के दूसरी तरह नहीं कि मतलब रात में या वो धुंधली जिसमें चीज खत्म हो रही है, बल्कि इसमें यह है कि उस असरे नौ की रात में और इस धुंध में तुम एक सितारा हो. कैसे?
हाँ, बिल्कुल सही है, लेकिन इसको हाँ नहीं यही है, लेकिन इसको ब्रॉडर पर्सपेक्टिव में लेना. अब आज जो पोजीशन है ना इस्लाम की, उस वक्त की, उसका नक्शा है ये कि असरे नौ, आजकल के जो दिन हैं, यू आर गोइंग थ्रू डार्क टाइम्स. ये वो मैसेज ये है, असरे नौ, आजकल का जो दौर है ये अंधेरा है, इसमें अंधेरा है, मगर तू सितारा भी है, धुंधला से ही, धुंधला तू हो चुका है लेकिन अभी तू है, और तू ही सहारा है कश्ती हक का, इस्लाम के पैगाम का तू ही सहारा है, सिर्फ और सिर्फ तू। और चूंकि ये डार्क डेज है, इस्लाम हार रहा है इस वक्त, हर मुल्क में तुम लोगों को शिकस्त हो रही है, तो ये तुम्हारा, दिस इज द बैड डेज एंड डार्क डेज फॉर यू, बट द डेज, द न्यू डेज कमिंग। एंड कैसे मिलेंगे, ऊपर 4 लाइनों में बताया है कि ईरान अगर चला जाएगा, एक मुल्क की बाउंड्री चली जाएगी, तो इसका मतलब नहीं कि इस्लाम खत्म हो जाएगा। हमें इससे गरज नहीं है कि एक मुल्क बचता है कौन सा नहीं बचता, हम मंडाशाह मैं को ताल्लुक नहीं पैमाने से कि कहाँ बचना इसमें, हमें तो इस्लामिक मैसेज से गरज है, और ये जो है इंशाल्लाह फैलेगी। और कैसे फैलेगी, तातारियों के अफसाने से मालूम हो रहा है कि काबे को सनम खाने से पासबा मिल जाएंगे। अगर आपको उसकी हिस्ट्री याद होगा तो आपको पता चलेगा टाटर का जो ग्रैंड सन था, मेरे ख्याल में कोई उसी की औलाद में था, उसका नाम मुझे देखने दे, क्या था उसका नाम था,
I think it was Burke Khan.
तिकोदार or something, तिकोदार, हाँ। He accepted Islam, और उसके बाद he became the big defender of Islam। और उसके बाद आपको पता है रोम के एक जगह के पूरे लोग इंक्लूडिंग देयर रूलर मुसलमान हो गए थे। तो ये उसकी पेशगोई की जा रही है कि अभी जो बाउंड्रीज कुछ मुल्कों की खत्म हो रही हैं, ईरान मिट जाएगा वगैरह वगैरह, उस वक्त तो पर्शिया वाज अ बिग एम्पायर एंड ऑब्वियसली Ottomans were losing, then these countries were being taken up by western powers। तो उसमें कंसोलेशन मिल रही है। तो ये आपका बात सही है, कश्ती हक मीन इस्लामिक मैसेज, सहारा तू है, और असरे नौ रात है, इसमें ये मैसेज है कि these are the dark days for Islam, so don't worry because you are a star still there, although you are dim, somewhat dim right now, politically you are on the most kind of low edge right now, but you will get better. It's giving a little encouraging message through here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think also for those people who are like watching shows like Ertugrul, right, you get to see this romanticized, historicized history, which is mainly fiction. But the fact is, when he's saying that पूरे तातार के अफसाने से वो हम लोग आया हैं इस मामले में, that the Mongols were one of the first invading forces to completely obliterate and humiliate the Muslim world, but then eventually they became the force that spread Islam in the Muslim world. So ईरान तो नहीं रहा, ठीक है, तुम तो नहीं मिट जाओगे ईरान के वो बदलने से, and it's not a coincidence he's saying Iran as well, because number one, the Persians were the Sasani Empire, for example, was a very powerful empire. Not only that, is within that Persian culture and within the dynasties and the influence of them coming to current day India, that Muslims may have found that sense of power and identity. So he's saying that that the changing the glass doesn't change what's inside the glass, right? Changing the glass doesn't remove the wine in that sense. And
exactly.
How do we know that? Well, here it is. The Tataris, they were literally the remnants of of people that were born out of the post Mongol wars, right? That they were neither, a lot of them were like part Turkish, part Mongolian and whatnot. And if you go to, for example, modern day Poland is has Tataris that are part of the camp. It's actually in Poland and in Russia are some of the only places today that Tataris are able to maintain a distinct identity. I remember I went to Poland, and for those of you that are not familiar with Poland, they were going through very similar politics to the way America was, this idea of creating a nationalist identity. Poland has been unable to maintain identity, number one, because of World War II, the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, East Germany, West Germany, the Nazis on one end, Stalin on the other end. So now they've been trying to understand what it means to have a Polish identity. And there are factors that kept saying that if you're not white or if you're not Polish, we don't want you here. So there was a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment as well. But what's interesting is that they don't have any anti-Tatari sentiment. And the Tataris in Poland today are considered Poles. Like the non-Muslim Polish people consider Tataris to be indigenous Muslims to Poland, and are able to maintain their identities. It's very interesting to note those politics. But he's saying here that it was these groups of people that were very much so against Islam and against Muslims, but it was through them जो अफसाना उनसे ही शुरू होती है. So, and the example that he gives after is, Pasban mil gayi Kabe ko sanam khane se. That the ones who were originally being kicked out of the Kaaba, that were being removed from the Kaaba, and here again in reference to the Islamic message, are the ones who are now engaging in spreading that message. It's actually in reminiscent of a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein he said that Allah can even use a fasiq, a sinner, to spread the message of this, of Islam. So it's not your good deeds and everything that makes you a leader in Islam, but rather it depends on who Allah depends upon. Kashti haq ka zamane mein sahara tu hi hai, right? And now the tone is changing, that the ship of truth in this age, its protector, or the protectors of the boat of truth, is you. Asre no raat hai. Right here, he's talking about that in this new age, in the night, you are the bright star within it. So yeah, that's what's important to keep in mind. I think many times people get very hung up again on olden days and whatnot, but it's not about the olden days. It's about looking at Asr No and the new, in this time and day, in this time and age. What are we doing to better this time and day and this time and age? So if anyone has anything to add, more than welcome.
I was going to ask, Brother Nihal, you always reflect how many times whatever Imam Iqbal is saying is a reflection of what's being said in Quran. So if I remember correctly, if you can add to it or elaborate on this, please, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says often where he will replace the ones who are disobedient, for example, or who are not, who go astray from the believers, and he will replace them with the better ones. So is this something that we're reading here also, as you mentioned, the Hadith of Arka also, where, if we're not following what we're told to follow, or we're weak in our faith, will be replaced by the ones who are stronger or actually serve the faith?
I mean, there are ayat about, like, if we don't do our job, Allah will replace us, right? That, oh, you who believe, whosoever turns away from his faith, Allah will replace them, right?
Okay.
Allah will love them, they will love Allah. That aspect is definitely there, but that's in order for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to decide, right? There are times where Allah will remove a people, and other times, but think about this, right? I want you to keep this in mind. There are times where people know what's right and they willingly take the wrong path, right? So for example, you'll find in the Quran, Allah calling out people who are considered scholars, making an unethical decision while knowing the right path. But when you look at people like the Mongols, they're fighting for a completely different cause, right? And when, when they make their mark on the spot, they've caused harm, but the moment truth came to them, they accepted it, turned around and used it for their good. I think that's what it comes down to. And that's why in the beginning of the Quran, Allah defines people based on their intentions. Number one, you have people that are seeking good and are good and their intentions are good. Number two, you have people that are bad that are seeking bad because their intentions are bad. And then number three, you have people that are seeking bad, their intentions are bad, but they're doing it on the backs of acting like they're good. That's why hypocrisy is very much so looked down upon in Islam. So when we see it in this light, these people, the olden Mongols, they were fighting for a specific cause, and what their intentions for fighting were very important, because that changed when it came towards being for Islam. Allah is showing that that now at this point they were against the kashti haq, against the boat of truth, but then now they're working for that boat of truth.
But what I was wondering, these people are replacing, or they were against, or as you said, they basically eliminated the Muslims in that area. They were so strong physically, or however they were in their strategy, and they were the feeling I got was that they are replacing the existing Muslim there who are probably not doing as well. I don't know their situation, so I can't say. I was just thinking.
No, sister, Nihal, can I interject a little bit here? Yeah. No, that is not the perspective here. The message that's permeating through this is that you consider this to be a negative development, but this will eventually be a positive development for you. So this message is consoling Muslims. These starters, when they came, they were not converting anybody back to Christianity or anything else. They were basically trying to kill all Muslims. That's what they wanted to do when they destroyed in the earlier invasion into what is now Iraq and Iran, that area. They actually slaughtered people, but they were not interested in spreading any religion. They basically were taking over the property. But here Iqbal, through his kind of divine message, but whatever, he is trying to give a message that do not be afraid if some boundaries of some countries are lost, but message will stay intact, whether it comes from this glass or that glass. And you will see that the same people who right now are idol worshippers or people that are non-believers, from them will be the protectors of Islam. Yeah. So this is a different kind of a perspective that is coming through. What you mentioned about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he doesn't like a particular nation, he places it into the new one. That is true, but that is not what is meant here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If I may, Brother Nihal, if I may add a couple of points on that. So I put in the chat, Sister Tayyiba, and I think your point is very valid. The last ayah of Surah Muhammad, which deals with this, that you know, what subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the believers that if they do not spend in the path of God, then He will replace them with others, and they will not be the same as them. Right. I mean, they'll be better. And I think that theme, it may not be the focus of this particular passage, but for the Shikfa and Jawab Shikfa, it's very powerful. Yeah. Because the idea that the Muslims complaining about their situation, and then Allah saying, well, if you live properly, then you would have the majesty. And if you particular individuals don't do it, I'll come with other people who will. And so I think that's a very fair point. And also, as you were talking, Dad, reminds me of Surah Rum, right, where it seemed like a defeat, but then it becomes a victory for the Muslims later on. So the idea that the Muslims will be happy later on with the turn of events. Yeah.
Jazakallah, everyone.
Okay. All right, I guess we can move to the next lines.
Okay. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. One of the things we should do is just I'm trying also, try to just learn the proper pronunciation of these words that are a very heavy Urdu. So, है जो हंगामा बपा योरश बलगारी का गाफिलों के लिए पैगाम है बेदारी का तू समझता है ये सामा है दिल आजारी का इम्तहां है तेरे इसार का खुददारी का क्यों हरासा है सहीले फरसे आदा से नूरे हक बुझ न सकेगा नफसे आदा से. The difficult words are hangama, which is kind of a riot or upheaval. Bapa is ongoing. Yorish again is a fight or a battle or an invasion. Bulgari is the Balkans. Gaflu ke liye paigam, message. Bedari is waking up. Tu samajhta hai ye sama hai dil azari ka, something that will make your heart ache. I'll give you something hurtful to you. Imtahan is a test. Tere isar ka, of your sacrifice, willingness to give away of yourself. Khuddari is taking care of your respected self and protecting yourself and taking care of your own needs. Khuddari has, in this particular sense, encompasses all those things: protecting what you have, protecting your respect, and keeping what you have. Kyun harasa? Harasa is frightened. Sahil is the voice that the horses make. हिनाते हैं जो उसको सहील कहते हैं. फरस से आदा, फरस उसको घोड़े को कहते हैं और आदा is दुश्मन. उदू is one, आदा is plural of that. तो enemies के horses की voice जो है हिनाना, नूर हक, light of the truth, light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nafas is the blowing. Actually, the breathing out is called nafas. here in this book is breathing out, breathing in is nafas, सांस जो है, यानी कि if they blow out, and आधा is your enemies. नूर हक बुझ ना सकेगा, खुदा की बत्ती जो है वो लोगों के, तेरे दुश्मनों की फूंकों से बुझ नहीं जाएगी. So basically, again, a consolation message in all these things, telling that this is basically a test for you guys. Nihal.
Yeah. There was actually something that just came to mind that I wanted to share with everyone. The idea that Imam Iqbal is mentioning at the end of this surah, or sorry, at the end of this band, I wanted to actually bring up this verse from Surah At-Tawbah, actually, where that same concept is mentioned. The idea where he's saying that Noor haq bujh na sakega nafse aada se, that from the blowing of your enemies, the light of truth will not go out. And the idea of blowing of like air towards fire or sun is mentioned here, where Allah says in Surah Tawbah that they want to extinguish the light of God with their mouths, right? And yutfi'u nur Allah bi afwahihim. Wa ya'ba Allahu, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuses, except that He's going to let the light become perfected. And look, Allah is refusing to allow them to do that. Illa an yutimma nurahu. So Allah will complete their nur, or complete His light. And I want you to keep this word in mind. An yutimma, tamma yatimmu itmam. Itmam is a word that's going to actually come in the last band when we do today. So itmam means completion. So what Allah wishes is the completion of His light. Walau karihal kafirun, even if the disbelievers dislike it. So when going on, as we've mentioned every week, the last two lines are indicative of what the entire subject, or what the band is talking about. So here, kyun harasa hai sahile faras se aada se. So why is it that there's this fright? Why are you afraid when you hear the enemy horses coming through? Because at the end of the day, just because they're coming and they're stomping their hooves in the ground, and you see the dust rising, it's not going to reach God's light. So at the end of the day, that through the blowing of the enemies, them going towards the sun is not going to do any harm to the sun. If anything, it's going to tire them out. It's going to make them incapacitated. So then here, everything that's being shown is that all of what is happening, the people that are going away, ghafilon ke liye paigam hai bedari ka, right? So being sick and tired is the message that is being sent to those that are ghafil, that are just unaware, right?
Ghafil is somebody who are they are aware, but they are oblivious, they are inactive.
Yeah.
They know what to do, but they're not doing it. Ghaflat kar rahe hain. They are kind of, yeah.
And then how did you?
Nihal, you read the last line very well. Nafs se aada se noor haq bujh na sakega. Beautiful. इसी तरह if you read the line above that, it says faras aada ki sahil se tu harasa kyun hai. You see, if you read that, then the meaning becomes opened up a little bit.
Right.
घोड़ों की आवाज जो हिनहनाने की आवाज आती है दुश्मनों की, उससे तू डरता क्यों है? क्योंकि अल्लाह का नूर जो है वो इनके फूंकने से बुझ नहीं जाएगा.
Right.
So ये ऊपर भी यही है. ये जो बलगारी की योरिश का हंगामा है, ये तो जो लोग गाफिल हैं उनकी बेदारी के लिए पैगाम है. तू ये समझ रहा है कि दिल आजारी का ये सामान है? नहीं, ये तो तेरी खुददारी और इसार का इम्तिहान है. See, this is a sleaze reading of these. है जो हंगामा बपा योरिश बलगारी का गाफिलों के लिए पैगाम है बेदारी का. तू समझता है ये सामा है दिल आजारी का, इम्तिहान है तेरे इसार का, खुददारी का. So this is if you unfold it, then it becomes fairly easy to understand, but you have to read it 2-3 times really to grasp these words.
Well, I was going to ask you, what's the context of the Balkan Wars here?
The Balkan Wars were at that time on their way, at that time when this was being written. Okay, it continued even afterwards too. And they were much softer as compared to the previous invasions of Mongols that you already mentioned.
Yeah.
So it was going on at that time that some of the, probably at that time, because when he refers to it, Paswa mil gaye Kabe ko sanam khane se, that means that there were already indications that there were, some of them might have been accepting Islam at that time. I will really have to see the time period, but basically he's referring to that this is not the same thing like Mongols were. Mongols basically were destroy and then go back. And here now, the situation is a little bit different and hopeful, in the sense that they are probably open to receiving the message of Islam, or they'll be made to listen to the message by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will.
Actually, I looked it up. So the Balkan Wars were actually the prelude to World War I. And in the Balkan Wars, it was the Ottomans that were being fought, and the Ottomans lost most of the battles and lost a lot of their land actually in those Balkan Wars. So I guess the Muslim community was very, up in arms about that. But they're like, yeah, they lost, but ghaflon ke liye paygam hai bedari ka. So yes, that loss is something to kind of sulk in and look at and reflect over, is what it seems like Dr. Saab is saying, Dr. Allama Iqbal is saying.
Yes. Well, there was a whole lot of political kind of situations that were very, very difficult for Ottomans to control at the time.
Yeah.
Situation in the Arabic world was very, very weak. Saudi Arabia, at that time it was not Saudi Arabia, but those people were exceptionally disunited, and they had basically been occupied, so to speak. So they had to agree to certain terms, and Ottomans were on the losing side. Obviously, Tartars had done most of the damaging work, but again, here in this particular bond, the reference is being made to a positive developments that may be forthcoming.
Yeah.
So this is why there is a hope that permeates through these lines. So,
right.
Because, and like you said, the Tartars may have at that time been party to division or disappearance of Ottoman Empire, and yet they somehow or the other were giving hope to the Muslim Ummah that maybe this might change again as compared to the Western, the British Empire and their allies.
Right. Where did this one? And then here what he was saying, tu samajhta hai ke sama hai dil azari ka. So dil azari, is he referring to self-care, right? Or caring?
No. Dil azari means
I'm sorry.
Dil dukhana. Yeah. Hurting you. It'll make you sad. It'll make you depressed.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a depressing development? This is a negative development. This will hurt you. तुम्हारे दिल को खराब करेगा. Azar कहते हैं मुसीबत को, मुश्किल को. It'll put your heart in trouble. Means you will feel a heartache.
Got it.
But this is not that. It's just a test of your sacrifice and how much can you really be stand for yourself. Khuddar is somebody who really respects oneself to the point that is willing to really confront anything that comes its way when your identity or your integrity or your honesty is being questioned.
Yeah.
And if you are a khuddar, you will stand up for your rights. And if you are just a coward, then you will give up.
So actually, he says, yeah. And I think what he's saying that ये सब जो कुछ हो रहा है तुम समझते हो ये दिल आजारी है, right? मगर ये एक इम्तिहान है तुम्हारे ईसार का, तुम्हारे खुददारी का.
तुम्हारी कुर्बान, कितनी कुर्बानी दे सकते हो तुम और कितना कुछ अपना ख्याल कर सकते हो तुम. Yes.
So you think it's a call that's happening, or do you think this is all happening to cause you harm to your heart, but it's really a test of your sacrifice and yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's very powerful.
It is, yeah, it is. But you see, I mean, I am amazed at the poetic aspect of this, because how he is, if you compare it with the previous month that we have been reading, how he's changing the mood and the message from you were bad, this is why you're getting it. And then it comes to what is happening now. And then now he's telling us that don't feel so bad. because this may be in a way, a hidden way of all of you waking up and taking care of yourself. Then don't worry about if you lose boundaries from here to there, because if you remember, right after Ottomans lost, that whole area was divided into small countries, and under influence of France, some under influence of Britain, some under influence of others. So that had basically was on the mapping maps at the time being made. This is written in, let's say, from 1909 to 1910 or 11, somewhere there Iqbal wrote it.
Yeah.
So at that time, you can see that the First World War is basically, at its peak. Imminent, yes. Starting at 14 and then going further up.
I actually
But
wanted to show you all this
yes.
here. This is actually a map of it. So this is all
Good.
the, oh, hold on. It adds.
Sorry.
Right, this is all the land that they lost actually from the Balkan Wars, and it was this area. So Albania today, parts of Greece, all of that was seceded to these different areas.
Yes.
You know, and eventually removing the amount that the Ottoman Empire had. But I didn't realize it was one of the preceding conflicts leading to World War I.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So this is where, Brother Nihal, this is when they started calling the Ottomans the quote unquote sick man of Europe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's when it happened. It was, and then also that's what encouraged the others, the allies, that they could take from the Ottoman empires.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had to divide it up, and they had to come up with all those very, very difficult contracts that they wrote with what is now Saudi Arabia and with Turkey.
Right.
By the way, the Turkey's agreement is finishing next year. I think
Right.
it's
24.
24, somewhere there.
Yeah.
So once that finishes, then the Red Sea and that area, they will have control over it again. But it's amazing that they had to write for 100 years,
Yeah.
100 plus by the time. So
And
interesting
also,
how Iqbal could think it through.
Dr. I don't know if you know or remember that share. There is a share that President Erdogan reads pretty frequently, where Iqbal had written that, although you see these parts being separated from you, but from this will rise, a night full of stars. So Iqbal wrote that at that, for them at that time. And he still remembers that and reads it pretty frequently.
Oh, I don't remember listening it from him. I don't know which one that is. It's not in Iqbal's poetry anywhere?
I'm not sure if it is, but that was especially for that, to tell them that although you see that, all this is being done around you and with you, from this will rise, sky full of stars or something like that.
Achha, I will have to look at the verse, because I can't remember listening it or hearing it from Erdogan himself. But he is, if you go to Turkey, and I have been there only once, but you would feel that they are in love with Pakistan and Pakistani people, and love Iqbal to no end. And they have a symbolic burial grave for him there, right? In Rumi's courtyard. But the love for Pakistan and Pakistani people, and what Pakistan has done for Turkey, and especially how Iqbal and his literature has reflected on poetry. वो है, अगर आसमानियों पे कोह गम टूटा तो क्या गम है कि खूने सद हजार अंजम से होती है सहर पैदा. That was Iqbal stuff that we read. अगर उस्मानियों पे कोह गम टूटा तो क्या गम है. If Ottomans, if they had a mountain of sorrow that they had to go through, so why should you worry? Because खूने सद हजार अंजम से होती है. When dawn comes, and thousands of stars have to disappear. That's the stars apparently have to die so that a dawn can come, because you can't see them. So he has used that symbolism अगर उस्मानियों पे कोहे गम टूटा तो क्या गम है कि खूने 100,000 अंजम से होती है सहर पैदा. Yes, yeah, Amir just do Google it out for me. Thank you, Amir.
Yeah, there was something that I was thinking about actually. So basically, as Allama Iqbal's right, this is what after how many years did Allama Iqbal write Jawab al-Shikwa after Shikwa?
2 to 3 years.
3 years.
2
So
to
this
3
is
years, but
like,
yeah.
Yeah, so this is basically current events for everyone that's reading this. Back then.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's happening right in front of
Amazing.
them.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Evidently, it was very clear to him as to what was going to happen.
Right, right. All right. Anyone else?
Interestingly, also,
yeah,
Kamal Ataturk actually, Iqbal was not happy with him changing the alphabet. I mean, they changed to the Roman alphabet or the way they write. So
Yes.
he said something about that. So Ataturk told him, instead of criticizing us, go to India and liberate your own country.
Wow. That's something.
Well, political needs of different countries were different at the time. And don't forget, prior to that, at that time, if you look at India also, it had little provinces, little Maharajas, little states that were basically run. It's like Saudi Arabia also, or what is now UAE. There were little tribes that had their own little governance in their own areas. And nations as they stand today did not exist. So human society was kind of growing and developing at that time. Now, I usually talk about how when the passport started, when people started to have visas to travel and all that, these are all developments that are fairly recent. Prior to that, humans couldn't travel that far, so there was definitely different geographical realities and needs. With the advent of air travel and trains and stuff, it became necessary that humans now develop national identities and then protection of the borders and then developing armies and all that under a central government. All that is development in the last couple of centuries.
Yeah, in that time, people who used to go for Hajj really very seriously thought that they will probably not return.
They turn back, yeah. Yeah, because those people, they invariably, they traveled together in caravans, they got attacked along the way by the dacoits.
Right, and got sick.
And this was a fairly well-established phenomenon.
Hardship. Yeah, very hardship, lot of hardships.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I think we can move on to the last band.
The next band is even more giving optimism.
Yeah.
And giving some credit. Chashme Aqwam se makhfi hai haqiqat teri. When he says teri means the Muslims, not one person, but as a Muslim community.
Yeah.
Chashme Aqwam se makhfi hai haqiqat teri. Hai abhi महफिल हस्ती को जरूरत तेरी. जिंदा रखती है जमाने को हरारत तेरी. और कौकबे किस्मत इम्कान है खिलाफत तेरी. वक्त फुर्सत है कहाँ, काम अभी बाकी है. नूर तौहीद का इत्माम अभी बाकी है. Beautiful. This is fairly easy. Chashm is eye, aankh. Aqwam is nations, qaum ki jama hai. Makhfi is hidden. है अभी महफिल हस्ती means this world. The महफिल is a gathering. Hasti is the people that exist, which means the world. जरूरत तेरी, of course. जिंदा रखती है ज़माने को हरारत तेरी. हरारत is not heat but activity. Your actions that you do, that is what's keeping the world alive. और कौकब किस्मत इम्कान. कौकब सितारा, किस्मत is तकदीर या fate. इम्कान is possibilities. खिलाफत तेरी, your caliphate, your governance, your king, your ruling of a community or a nation or whatever. वक्त फुर्सत है कहाँ, काम अभी बाकी है. नूर तौहीद is the oneness of God. इत्माम is completion, like Nihal said before. To complete that, Noor Tawheed ka itmam abhi baki hai. Although oneness of God, that message has been coming to humanity from Adam alayhi salam through all the messengers, and yet this was never really fully protected or kept alive throughout humanity all along until the arrival of the final messenger and the final message, because this is the only message that could be kept intact, unadulterated. So that would make the itmam, that would give a clear message. So this basically is saying that you are needed in this world, and तेरी वजह से जो है किस्मत का, इंसान की किस्मत का सितारा जो है वो जो है चमकेगा, और तेरी एक्टिविटी से जो है दुनिया जो है वो जिंदा है, कायम है, और इस दुनिया को अभी तुम्हारी जरूरत है। लेकिन लोगों की आंखों से अभी तेरी हकीकत जो है वो छुपी हुई है, तुम्हें अच्छी तरह पहचान नहीं रहे, दुनिया अभी तुम्हें पहचान नहीं रही, तो तुम्हें फुर्सत नहीं है अभी नूर तौहीद जो है उसको कंप्लीट करने का काम तुम्हारे ज़िम्मे है, और ये बाकी है।
Yeah. So he's saying that your true reality is hidden from people's view.
Yes.
And currently people are in need of you. And the activity or your work that you have to do, what you do is keeping others alive, is keeping others going. And then Dr. Saab, here when he was saying Kauka be kismat imkan hai, what would be a proper translation of that?
For all the possibilities, your caliphate, your governance, your rule, that is the star, the star, तकदीर का सितारा, कौम की तकदीर का सितारा जो बताएगा कि तुम्हारी तकदीर क्या होने वाली है, वो तू है। किस्मत इम्कान, इम्कान is possibilities, what can happen, उसकी जो आगे आने वाली तकदीर है, उस तकदीर का सितारा तू है। डोंट फॉरगेट, लोग सितारों को देख के अपनी किस्मत का देखा करते थे, मेरी किस्मत का सितारा कब निकलेगा, कब चमकेगा, मेरी किस्मत कब जागेगी, तो उस प्रोवर्ब को उसने यूज किया है। तेरी खिलाफत जो है ये पॉसिबिलिटीज का जो सितारा है, वो सितारा है जो तेरी कैलिफेट है। यू आर द ओनली शाइनिंग स्टार that will alter the fate of the world.
Yeah. So from all the possibilities, it's your leadership that is the guiding star. It is from all the stars, yours is the brightest.
नहीं, all stars नहीं है, सिर्फ तुम्हारी जो खिलाफत, तेरी खिलाफत जो है वो इम्कान, जो तकदीर लिखने वाले का जो इम्कान है उसका सितारा है, बाकी सारों को छोड़ दो, सिर्फ यह कि तू ही किस्मत का सितारा है दुनिया के लिए।
Yeah.
ठीक है, ये नहीं, it's not comparing with other stars, it's basically saying कि तू ही तो दुनिया की किस्मत का सितारा है, तू ही तौहीद का असल पैगाम पूरी दुनिया तक पहुंचाएगा। अभी इस दुनिया को तुम्हारी, इस महफिल हस्ती को तुम्हारी जरूरत है, लेकिन दुनिया की कौमें अभी तुम्हारी हकीकत को पहचान नहीं रही, ये कि तुम्हारी हकीकत उनसे छुपी हुई है।
Yeah. And then वक्त फुर्सत है कहाँ, काम अभी तो बाकी है। What time is there to rest? There's a lot of work to be done. नूर तौहीद का इत्माम अभी बाकी है. Completing the task of spreading tawheed, it's still there. We still have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have no free time left. You have work to do, because this message of oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for this to be completely understood and cleansed and purified, that job still needs to be done.
Yeah.
If you imagine 3/4 of the world population even today does not really understand Tawheed, because they have all assigned partners to him. Christianity does that through Trinity, and others have idols that they have made out, although they all have a concept of somebody in charge of all of that, and yet they have not completely understood the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They feel the need of an idol in front of them because they cannot perceive that Allah is closer to them than their aorta, so to speak. So that they have not understood. When you understand oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his nur, then you realize that he's all around you, in you, around you, and you don't need anything else. Just look within yourself and then you'll find him. So that job Islam has done. No other prior faith group. I wouldn't say Islam because Islam has been since Adam, but no other faith group that existed prior to coming of our beloved Prophet had the message in its pure form.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone have anything to add? We're almost at the end. 5 more buns. That's it.
Maybe we can do one more.
We're basically at time, but wanted to see if
Yeah, I think somehow or the other,
yeah.
these are fairly simple, so everybody understands it probably.
Yeah.
I had a question about this one. Here we as Muslims, as a nation, are being addressed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So all
As
of
a
us have
community,
this
not a
job
nation,
to do.
yes.
Okay, as an ummah. As an ummah.
As a ummah, yes.
Okay.
There is a similar verse. बागे भज से मुझे हुक्म सफर दिया था क्यों कारे जहां दराज है अब मेरा इंतजार कर. So this was a mission to make the world Muslim. This was the mission of the Muslims to make this world Muslim. So God sent Muslims to make this world Muslim. कारे जहां दराज है. Baghe Bhash se mujhe. We came from Baghe Bhash. So this was the mission of Allah. Iqbal quoted in this verse.
Right. Beautiful. Very nice.
Oh yeah, this was great mission.
Yes, it's a
And
great
then
mission, and it's
he raised the Muslim spirit so much. Sometimes you cannot sleep. You see, with the same situation, that was mission of a Muslim. There is no other mission at all. Let me finish to make the whole world Muslim for you, and then I can come, then give me the end of my life. And इत्तेहाद का भी आप पहले कह रहे थे ना, तो he kind of reached to everyone. So एक हो मुस्लिम हरम की पासबानी के लिए. Oh, this is fascinating. एक हो मुस्लिम हरम की पासबानी के लिए. This was his dream.
नील के साहिल से लेके ताक बहा के काशगर.
बहा के काशगर. Nobody would call anybody else Indian Muslim or Saudi Muslim or. So he was worldwide known as a predictor also. You were talking about prediction. So his prediction, like China was his prediction. Space program in the United States was his prediction. सितारों से आगे जहां और भी हैं, अभी इश्के इम्तिहान और भी. So he said in a time when nobody was thinking about even, space programs. So these are like spiritual indications and guidance and powers. Spiritual powers are so great that they can change the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Muqaddas has her hand raised, so you can go ahead, Muqaddas.
Please.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. I have a question, Doctor. यहाँ पे जिस जमाने में इकबाल थे, तब पूरी दुनिया का जो पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर था वो बदल रहा था. तो जो अब हम लोग मुस्लिम नेशंस आजकल के दौर की आपस में इंटरेक्ट करती हैं, उनको अक्सर जैसे हम अपनी सिविलाइजेशन के बारे में पढ़ रहे होते हैं कि आपके आबाओ अजदाद तो इस तरह से एक दूसरे की हेल्प करते थे एज नेशंस, राइट? लेकिन अब जब इस जमाने के बाद तो एक वो स्ट्रक्चर ही बदल गया ना बिल्कुल। तो फिर अब मुस्लिम नेशंस को how should they interact, how should they help, or is how what is the way to do that then, that आप अपनी वो spirituality भी maintain रख रहे हैं, आप basically तो एक ही मजहब के followers हैं, right? So what is an ideal way for Muslim nation then to preserve and progress the same political structure?
Yeah.
Well,
What is
follow
going?
his rules, follow his guidelines of his ideology. That was the best famous thing about him, that he was a message to the whole world. And his kind of this is interesting, fascinating. I heard he kept a copy of Holy Quran with him all the times. And one time his philosophy was totally spiritual and godly. And I don't know if you heard, Goethe was a German poet. And he called Marde Momen Iqbal ka hai na? Chume goyan zabanam kedanam mushkilate la lara. So
Chumi goyam
Chume
Musalmanam Balarzam.
kedanam mushkilate la lara. When I say I'm a moment, this was a moment's definition. And
But may I add something here?
Yeah.
There is a session I do with the kids. It's called Prophet Stories, and every time we read about a prophet, we realize that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's message was the same from day one, right? But
yes,
each prophet's circumstances were different. That message and the mode of spreading it was different. So from Iqbal time up to now, what may have changed? Because yes, जो ये कह रहे हैं absolutely, वो बिल्कुल ठीक है. What I'm trying to understand is कि he's actually presenting, giving us a changing picture of the world too, not just the Muslims but also the world.
I think, Muqaddas, one thing that it comes down to is also us recognizing who we are and what are our strengths. I think one area that we're struggling, and there was a really interesting Twitter thread that I was reading a couple of days ago. It was about how we've become very allergic to teaching people the arts, for example, and even amongst South Asian Muslim communities that, and when I say the arts, I mean things that are not STEM, things that are not the only value add being a career or money, where creativity is lacking. So the ability to understand our artistic tradition is not there, wherein we've had a tradition of architecture, of understanding how do we take some, like at the end of the day, if you take something like architecture, it's a very functional science where, like, if you put up 4 beams and put a roof on top of it, it does the job of what you need it to do. But we have gone out of our ways to beautify, to showcase, and to show the best of even the basics that we have. So a lot of times I think we get lost with that. People boil Islam down to the bare basics and forget to build the beauty on top of that. So I think in a nutshell answer, it's like understanding, for example, child psychology, understanding what are children actually seeking when they're asking questions, and providing the information and garnishing and packaging that information in that manner, I think is the best thing to do. But it's going to require not just being very not just looking at everything as a career value add, but also understanding, like, how do we converse? What language are we utilizing? And I'm not saying Urdu, English, or Arabic, but what language are we utilizing in the way we say things, in our tone? Is it translating well? But yeah, and I think Muqaddas, I think it goes back to something we had read today, right? It had I think the first verse was Nashe mein ko taalluk nahi paimane se. Right? So it's not about that, as you mentioned. It's not about the glass. It's about if the glass breaks, get another glass, but the substance is still inside. And I think most of us are taught to value the glass over the substance. Heck, we don't even know what's in the substance. We don't know what's in the glass. And I think that leads to an issue. I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of what I'm thinking in regards to what you were saying.
Yeah, the other thing is that, the world has become really materialistic. So I think the only positive thing that our message would be, and many of the shares that we read, as well as Rumi's poetry, is the importance of being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And although these materialistic things are very appealing, and we were talking about nafs this morning, and Rumi says that to fight the nafs, you need it is so thirsty that 7 seas will not quench its thirst, and all the food in the world will not satisfy it. And it's like the biggest mountain that there is. And what all humans have is maybe a needle to try to, carve this mountain. So you need Allah's help to overcome this or to fight this. So that, I think, from materialistic to the spiritual is, I think, the big difference that we have, and that we have, we had, but we have forgotten that as well. It's not being taught, it's not being practiced. It's you don't see it in our own community as well, so unfortunately.
Oh, that's very fascinating statement you made. As you said, materialistic power, but his solution was spiritual powers. So spiritual powers can conquer all the difficulties of mankind, and materialistic values cannot. And this is proving all the times in the world that we are going away from spiritual powers, we are going into materialistic power. No, I don't know. I am kind of student of world-like existence, coexistence, and scientists have even proven. There was a very big project in Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the 70s and 80s, and that kind of based on limits to growth. This was international project that resources are not meeting the needs of mankind. And at that time, especially population and hunger and all those things were studied by an international group. Very famous organization participated. And if you go and see on, Google or somewhere, limits to growth in the 70s and 80s, and they studied the whole thing. And that was because materialistic situations did not match the, human needs. But Iqbal said spiritual powers can overcome these things.
Yeah. No.
So,
Dr. Rahman, if you could please read that share that you read this morning about the Shamshir.
क्या था?
अमल पे हम
तदबीर है शमशीर तेरी.
यकीन मोहकम.
अच्छा हुआ इकबाल का शेर.
अमल पे हम
मोहब्बत फाताए आलम. जहाद जिंदगानी में हैं ये मर्दों की शमशीरें. Okay, so yeah, it's very easy. यकीन मोहकम is a strong faith. अमल फहम is continuous struggle. Or muhabbat fatah alam, compassion that really wins over the world. It should be over encompassing everyone. Jihad zindagani means struggle of life. Ye mardon ki shamsheer. These are the actually weapons that brave people use. Mard is somebody who stands up for the principle. Not man here, but somebody who is brave enough and has the himmat to fight the evil.
No,
So, yes.
To
this
answer
is
sister's
fascinating. Sorry to interrupt. Whenever I go to a meeting or anywhere, I read this verse and I translate like this. Yakimokam, determination. Yakimokam amal peham mohabbat faliha.
Yakimokam is not determination. No, that's amal peham ka
Is
ho sakta hai,
faith.
determination.
Yes,
But yakimokam is strong faith.
yeah.
You believe in yourself that
Yeah,
you can do
exactly. Yeah.
it.
So I translate in English that these things can make this project more successful. And
Exactly.
love is the Yakima amal
Yes.
pe hum mohabbat, love. So I
Yes.
translate in English in every meeting and people understand it. Yeah.
A beautiful message. Beautiful message. Yes.
Also, I
always.
think this
You
is
do
the
a
answer
great
to his
service if you do
sister's
that.
question, as to what we should do or how we can, overcome, what's going on in the world.
Well, then you see, let me, if I indulge for a 30 seconds, just raise yourself above any nationality or identity, and look at what Iqbal is trying to tell you. Hey, at this point, when he was writing this, he was also part of a Muslim struggle within India against British Empire. The Britishers were really hurting India at the time and taking away the resources and stuff. So the question was, after the Britishers leave, how should we protect each other to be able to practice their faith systems? And initially, Iqbal felt that we should stay within India and more or less get independence. Later on, he realized that any nationality that we make separately for Pakistan may not be good because we are one Muslim ummah and we don't believe in a nation. Then thought matured to him later on, and he basically wanted not confined into a country, but to have a Muslim ummah. And that's why he had said, उस ज़माने में उसका एक शेर था ये भी कि इन ताज़ा खुदाओं में बड़ा सबसे वतन है, जो पैरहन इसका है वो मजहब का कफन है. If you confine yourself to a nationality, जो तारा खुदा बन रहे हैं, the other deities that you are now worshipping, अगर तूने एक वतन को बना के अब उसके अंदर रह के confine कर लिया अपने आप को, then you will not necessarily be serving the cause of message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. तो जो पैराहन इसका है, but the garment of this particular principle, ये मजहब का कफन है. This really buries your religion. In other words, don't confine yourself within boundaries of nationhood. So ये जो इस वक्त जो शेर सुनाए जा रहे हैं, he is basically talking about you are way beyond identity as a country, but you are a one ummah together, Muslim brotherhood, so to speak. Yeah. So if you look at that, then it becomes fairly easy. Now, later on, survival of these countries that we have now, their political alliances, and then the needs of the ruling parties or ruling personalities, they have, of course, altered that a little bit and slowed down the progress on that. But the main objective is basically to keep an identity and remember that you are created, you all came from one man and one woman, you are one as human beings, and you have to recognize your creator properly.
Sounds good. Jazakallah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think,
Jazakallah.
we are a bit over time, so I'm gonna leave off there.
Thank you.
Inshallah, in 2 weeks we'll be completing Jawab al-Shikwa, and we'll let you know what's to come because I know Ramadan is around the corner, so we'll keep everyone updated, inshallah.
Very good.
Inshallah.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi to all participants.
Wa